Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's November 26, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if you're curious to learn more, go to cloudposse.com. How can you maximize today's session? First off, our format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious of any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can register by just going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, cloudposse.com/office hours, where you can enter in your email and get a live invitation to our event. So with that said, let's see what caught my attention this week. First one was something that was shared by Runzon. They did their own assessment of EC2 instance types. If you're not familiar with Runzon, Runzon is a great low-cost option or alternative for self-hosted GitHub Action runners. It's basically a simple CloudFormation template you deploy in an account of your choice, and it handles all auto scaling. A lot easier to manage than something like Actions Runner Controller or some of the other options that we've used. So one of the things they did was they ran Passmark, which is a performance benchmarking tool, across all the major instance classes and came up with what has the highest or best performing CPU instance types. So if you're doing some pretty intensive CI that is CPU bound, these might be worth looking at. And it's pretty hard to assess the relative performance now that AWS just has so many crazy amounts of instances out there. So I thought this was kind of interesting. And we'll share links to this afterwards. I think this is the most exciting announcement that I have today. Andrea on our team shared this with me. So historically, when you deploy AWS NAT gateways, they are tied to a specific zone. And you want your availability zones you want to have at least two availability zones. We generally recommend three availability zones. And that means that for true HA, you used to need to deploy a NAT gateway in every single subnet, at least in one of those subnets, in one of those availability zones. NAT gateways add up and they're not cheap. So now the fact that you can deploy a NAT gateway once per VPC, mark it as regional, and it'll automatically expand to any regions, or sorry, any availability zones where you have workloads. That's pretty nice. Plus, you no longer even need to manage a separate allocation for public subnets. It handles that by itself. So there's a pretty nice announcement ahead of reInvent. Anyone have thoughts on this? The one question I have is, how it's priced. I didn't look into that specifically. Uh, so this was, more of a thought piece, I guess you could say. I think it is a vendor sponsored post, if you will. Signa, what is it? Signa dot? Yeah, Signa dot. But it's provocative in the sense that, it's a pretty common, well-established pattern to have, multiple SDLC environments, namely like multiple preview environments, perhaps for each and every one of your feature branches. Then you might separately have one for dev, which represents kind of the head of main. And then you might have a separate staging environment, which is like your next release, followed by production. And keeping those environments in sync can be a challenge. Obviously, if you have all of that as infrastructure as code, that the challenge goes away. Then the separate argument is that, well, you're maintaining a lot of environments and that adds up in cost. So what I take away from this article is more that I think it's worth to start considering if every change that is made has to go through a traditional dev staging production release cycle. Are there certain changes that can bypass that and go out into production faster and that you use feature flags to enable for a subset of users? I think that is a fair argument. But saying that staging is not necessary anymore, from our own very recent experience at Cloud Posse, I think that it is absolutely still necessary under certain circumstances, regardless of what others say. For example, large refactoring project initiatives where you're changing like the core of your applications, perhaps for performance reasons or otherwise, gating those behind feature flags. Uh, I guess anything is possible in engineering, but it's not practical. Any thoughts on this? All right. So here's a post that I thought was pretty interesting and something that I've been noodling on before I even saw somebody talk about it. And what I thought was interesting is it came from somebody else we've talked about on Office Hours many times before. You might have read this story. This came out in 2017 by Nolan Lawson, What It Feels Like to Be an Open Source Maintainer. And if you haven't read it, it's a great post. We'll share that as well. He basically talks about how there's, it's a very rewarding thing to be an open source developer, but there's a lot of open source users with a sense of entitlement that maybe don't express, or maybe that don't express their desires in such a way that it comes across as they have a sense of entitlement. So that was that post. But he has a new post now called "The Fate of Small Open Source," and I think this is interesting. So NPM, even Terraform, every major language out there has just like thousands of these small little single purpose libraries that do one thing that makes some problem easier. And with LLMs now and agentic coding, so much of that is just ignored or skipped that those modules or packages exist, which means that those modules and packages will continue to see less and less adoption, less and less contributions and so forth, and eventually wither away, which is to say that this whole like class of small module libraries might be hitting the dust pretty soon. And he talks about like a simple NPM module that he maintains that sees millions of downloads or 5 million downloads every single week. But these days, if you were just to ask, Cursor, it probably wouldn't, it would probably just implement the raw workaround directly within your code. I think this has implications on infrastructure as code. There's a lot of proliferation of Terraform modules out there, and it's so easy just to have your agentic editor create whatever module for any purpose that you want. And what does that mean for open source modules? I think that means that modules that don't have a community backing, modules that don't have like commercial support, might start um, getting less and less discovered. Thoughts on this?
I feel like this is an interesting one because on the one hand, there is a case to be made against not having extra dependencies, right? Because you see what happens with NPM
Yeah.
upstream attacks and such. So there is a strong case to be made with if you can't do it yourself, why not just have it there? But on the other hand, if there is some improvements that somehow sneak in over the years, maybe it can be beneficial to rely on a dependency. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. So I think one of the arguments is that what it means is that more complex projects or projects that do a little bit more than just small little utility functions or things like that, I think have a stronger chance at surviving. But having just like a module of one that is just ripe for a supply chain attack, then I think That's the problem. I know even
It
speaking
is, of course, it's a bit cheeky, of course, because all the AI tools will just spit out whatever your module is in its entirety, usually.
probably. Probably.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no. I was gonna say, I mean, I confess that there have been bugs or things that I've run into recently using third-party dependencies, and rather than opening a PR to fix it, I just asked the AI to re-implement, a comparable solution.
That's good.
All right, so that was that one. So, if anybody's been following along, what's been going on with AWS Copilot, which was a CLI to manage ECS, it's been more or less on life support. They said that they're not, sunsetting it, but there's really no activity on the project. However, in following some of the threads there, I saw this was announced appropriately just last week sometime that Amazon has now come out with ECS Express Mode, which is kind of like an opinionated implementation of a pass-like behavior on top of ECS. And there is forthcoming support for Terraform. The pull request has already been merged for that. And this makes it easy to spin up a service that has everything from the load balancer to the target groups to auto scaling configuration to the rolling update configuration, etc. So what was the new resource is this once it's released in the next version of the AWS provider, AWS ECS Express Gateway service. And you can also connect that with your VCS of choice. It does support GitHub, I would believe, so then it can make deployments easier. There are just so many ways to do things like this on AWS. It's makes my head spin. But yeah, I think this is worth taking a look at. And I wonder if there is any relationship then to the next announcement, which is that AWS CodeCommit has gotten a stay of execution. You might recall that back in July, we talked about how AWS had announced that they are basically killing off any new subscribers to AWS CodeCommit. Anyone continuing to use CodeCommit would have access to it for like a year or something, and then they were gonna, sunset that. Well, they are bringing it back now, and in fact, they're not just bringing it back; they're going to further invest into AWS CodeCommit. And I'm wondering if it's A, related to things like Espresso, no, not Espresso, but ECS Express Mode, as well as the spate of GitHub outages lately, and they hear from their enterprise customers, please give us an alternative. Um, I don't know that code commit will ever be competitive with something like GitHub. And I don't personally like code commit as a product in its current state. That said, I still see a couple practical use cases for code commit. One pretty practical one is that Git is basically your first distributed online offline document database, right? And it's so easy to push any branch up to another Git endpoint, Git remote. So using code commit as another Git remote for backups is a logical option. But the other one is that Code Commit is really nicely integrated with other AWS services. And one of the mechanisms of deployment that was popularized back in the day with Heroku, but many other past-like services have adopted, is this idea where you can push a branch to a remote to trigger a deployment. And I think in terms of building passes, platforms as a service, Code Commit is a nice solution. Not as a substitute for GitHub. You still do your code reviews, you still do your CI, you still do everything like that on GitHub. But when it's time to deploy, an option could be you just push that ref to a remote and it gets deployed automatically. Thoughts on that? All right, so that was Code Commit. This was just a small promotional piece from Google Cloud, feeling left out when, what was it? EKS said they hit some similar threshold that far exceeded what the published 65K node limit was. So Google GKE has demonstrated that they were able to spin up 130K node cluster um, uh, in experimental mode. And they talk about some of the things that they had to address just to be able to support that. For example, being able to launch thousands of pods per second and storing over 1 million objects to achieve that. I can't fully appreciate what goes into that. These days, those numbers seem pretty small, but um, I'm guessing in the context of Kubernetes, they are large. The Terrascan project, which was one of the first shift left kind of products for IAC vulnerability scanning, has been archived. Tenable has uh, kind of absorbed all that functionality into their flagship product, which I believe is called Nessus or something. The Terrascan project itself was on life support. I believe the last release was last year at some point, based on the uh, list of releases I saw. And Amazon Aurora now supports the ability to automatically mask output based on permissions in the database. So you can have obviously the raw data in the database, but based on the query and a person's level of access to that, the data will be automatically masked. And they're doing this by using a third-party a plugin called PG column mask. And that's all I got. Any interesting announcements this week? Something I missed?
I actually really wish this was in MySQL also, because one of our products is needs to be HIPAA compliant. We do have people pulling data from it. And it'd be really nice to be able to mask it automatically without having to do it through my custom tooling.
Yeah, but it looks like in this case they're using
Yeah,
a plugin. So if a comparable plugin exists for MySQL, maybe that'll be fast following. But yeah,
it's a cool idea though.
yeah, it is cool. At first, when I saw it though, I was hoping it was a way that you could easily do it like in snapshots. So you could create like a
Yeah,
snap of production for staging environments and so forth. But I can also see the utility of this.
I can see how you could do it with that and still just basically have a script that runs to do that for you with the right permissions.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what people invent time and time again.
Yeah,
But given it's a pretty common best practice, it'd be nice to see if Amazon purchase or does that. Uh, I always just was hoping that Amazon was just going to buy Neon, but that ship has sailed. All right. That's all I got. I guess we can, if there's no other announcements, we can go to Q&A. I admit I've been a little bit checked out. I'm actually out skiing this week for the Thanksgiving holiday here. So if I miss something, let me know.
My question is, how cold are you now that you have no hair on your head?
Right? Definitely feel it a lot more. I was just out this morning with my son, and yeah, not like having a full head of hair. Zach, you've been writing a lot of interesting posts lately. What is the latest thing you've been researching?
I did do I released a MCP server for Terraform because I got sick of looking through 20, 30, 40 modules, in various projects, a lot of them ones I developed and having to look back and find inputs and outputs. And I don't remember the shit I write from one day to the next sometimes. So yeah, so I created Terraform Ingest, and that's been mainly a passion project for myself that I could also then just give someone a YAML file of all the, target Git repos that have all these modules and, whether it's multi-module repos or not, and then have it ingested into like a local indexed, vector store embedded and yeah, it worked out really well. So
And
it's been
before
kind of
you went
fun.
this route, had you tried using, because I believe, I know OpenTofu has their own MCP. I haven't tried using it, and I'm guessing HashiCorp has one as well. Help me
They
understand
do.
the nuances and the difference between what you did.
They do, and they pair very well together. So
Mm.
the hash, so Terraform, as everyone knows, is a little bit obtuse for those who don't use it all the time. And the documentation is really pretty good if you go into like the provider docs and things like that. But uh, having that on hand, like the most recent documentation from the most recent provider is just not, it's not feasible to always be going into a website. So using like the Terraform provider from HashiCorp allows you to basically have instant access to that. It gives you immediate access to all the different provider docs, inputs, outputs, and you can really use that to level up your terraforming with agentic, help. The stuff that I wrote was for everything that falls outside of that. So your
Mm.
own internal libraries and
Okay,
custom
I see.
modules.
Yeah, yeah, things that are not
So,
public, kind of. Yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah. So like I was actually finding since in some instances I've, again, I'd have 20, sometimes 30 different projects, and it allows you to index all that stuff. It's kind of a good example, a use case of of very narrowly targeting AI at something and exposing some just a couple tools to your agent to be able to really level up your ability to query your own stuff and use it. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm pulling up the blog here. And for those following along, it's in the Zoom chat there. So if that sounds interesting, I could see that really being cool in the enterprise context too.
That was actually the target audience.
Yeah.
I am a consultant and I'm going from client to client and I'm not going, it's not like one client a month or anything, but several months and I leave a corpus of information and it gives them the ability to, well, essentially query these things and use them, without having to ping me, without having to look through the repos and stuff like that, or gives you the ability to also use your own puzzle pieces to make your own puzzle. So,
Mm,
but yeah, it's kind of fun.
cool. Very cool. Yeah. Anyone have questions for Zach on his post?
I didn't come today to announce this, by the way.
No,
Just because I'm.
I love to see it when your posts come up all the time throughout the community, and it's fun to see you on the office hours here. So thought I would take the opportunity to let you
So
promote.
just so you know, I used the Cloud Posse modules as an example in this. So if you were to go
Thank
to Terraform ingest, I think dash example as well, like that actually, I wrote a quick script to pull all your Git modules. And I mean, no, yes, it's not explicitly targeting the registry from HashiCorp, but it targets you can hit the most recent tagged releases of your uh, GitHub release modules, and I can create a whole
Yeah.
Terraform manifest based off of your work. Like
I
a,
think it's really cool. And
yeah,
where I see it also would be interested doing something like this with Atmos components. And it'd be really cool then if they could just really make coming up with new stacks consisting of lots of components easier and
right.
designing architectures that way. So, very cool. Any other questions today? Rishav, have you been working on anything interesting?
Yeah, I'm afraid no, not recently, no.
No, bummer.
If anything, I've been just trying to wrap my hand around OpenBao. So I know OpenTofu, that's been a thing for a while now. And I was trying to see, oh, it's probably a better time than not to jump from Vault to OpenBao and see how that integrates with Terraform. And truth be told, it's one of those things where it's so smooth, such a smooth transition, there is nothing notable to even talk about. You can even just
Right.
use your old Vault CLI. You don't even need to change to Bao CLI as long as you have your environment variables set up right. And
It
that
is
just kind of,
so
Yeah.
close to Vault. You can use all the tools. It's amazing.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
meant,
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
meant.
work, right? It's,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
it's been
but
great.
and is the community health behind, backing OpenBow solid? I mean, is it receiving regular contributions and releases just as before? Okay.
It is. For what it's worth, there is maybe a slight flaw at the time being. In the last few weeks, if not months, we have seen memory leaks, even in the latest releases. And this is documented in the changelog where someone's
Hmm.
tried to patch it, it's gone some way, but then something else opens up. So every few weeks, we're in this process of, hey, we need to restart the old OpenBao server again. And that's not a great place to be when you're relying on production credentials. But we also see it as a little bit of a probably teething issues. We'll get there eventually. It'll probably settle down.
Yeah. Zoe, I think you were about to add something.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, I had such great experience with getting it going on at my company in my ECS cluster. It just it's like Arlen said, it just works exactly like faults. Been
Yeah.
great.
Cool. Let's see. Any other questions we can get answered today? Maybe it'll be a short one, and I can go do a half day skiing.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to all you here in the US.
I, for one, am thankful for all the work the Cloud Posse does in the community. So
I appreciate that. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate for all the contributions we get from our community. I don't think we'd be able to manage all this if we didn't. And yeah, our contributors as well. Masterpoint, especially, his team is always on it, reviewing our pull requests and helping our community out. So thank you, Masterpoint. All right. Well, maybe we'll cut this one short. It is a kind of off week here in the US. A lot of people are out of the office and not that much going on. That said, we will be posting a recording of this to our Office Hours channel on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/cloudposse. If you're ever interested in some more support from Cloud Posse, we do provide commercial support on our entire open source ecosystem, just like Red Hat does for Red Hat OS. So let's see here. Here are some ways you can get more involved in our community. We have our Slack community at cloudposse.com/Slack and our live office hours that you can attend. You just need to register and enter your email. You'll get an invite to these weekly sessions, as well as, yeah, our newsletter and YouTube channels here. So thanks, everyone. Take care.